Welcome to Aging Insights. I'm Grace Egan, Executive Director of the New Jersey Foundation for Aging. The Foundation's mission is to enable seniors to live with independence and dignity in their communities. Aging Insights is produced by the New Jersey Foundation for Aging to provide information and resources to boomers, seniors, and caregivers. Our guests today include Mike Ruane, Executive Director of the Monmouth County Division of Aging, Disabilities, and Veterans Services, Sue Moleon, Director of the Monmouth County Office of Disabilities and Veterans Services, and Chris McKniff, FEMA Public Information Officer. Today's topic is disaster preparedness. When we think about disaster preparedness, we all think of Sandy and we think of the shore. So I appreciate Sue and Mike being here from Monmouth County, and I know that Chris has worked both in Monmouth and Ocean and other communities in New Jersey. I think it's a very widespread issue, so I really hope that our viewers get a sense of their general preparedness and really just the impact that storms can have and how to be better prepared. But Mike, before you describe what your office does, how many people are really still out of their homes?
Well, Chris was very good this morning. He gave us the latest information, where they have over 23,000 FEMA registered citizens that are still displaced from their homes. And this includes people who are homeowners as well as renters. The latest figures I had for Monmouth and Ocean County was over 12,000 people, of which over 6,500 were senior citizens.
So about 50% of those people are seniors,
yes.
When you think about it. And Chris, just to kind of, since Mike mentioned that you got the numbers, when you think of the 23,000 people, are they families? Are they single individuals? Do you have any sense of that?
I think they're individuals. Again, this information came from the Department of Community Affairs. And it is FEMA registered people. Again, these people are not necessarily homeless. They're just not
back where they originally
living at their original address.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, I think it's I think it's important for people to understand that it's not restored at this point in time. People are not back where they perhaps were in October. But Mike, why don't you talk about the Office on Aging or the Aging and Disability Veteran Services?
Well, the Monmouth County Office on Aging, Disabilities, and Veteran Services really looks at the three demographics that really need help and assistance. And in our office, we're broken down into three sections, two of which Sue is in charge of. The Office on Aging itself, we have four missions there. One is case management, where we have over 700 clients that are out in the community. These are senior citizens that need our help. My case managers are registered nurses and social workers. All have masters in social work. And they operate as teams, and they go out and they work with these folks. And they see them, at least on a monthly basis, and they call them weekly just to find out how things are going with them. We also have another section is information and assistance. So this is anyone who calls in looking for help. It could be on housing, it could be on finances, it could be counseling, it could be how they get on the let's say the Register Ready list. We'll be talking about that a little bit later on.
And that information and assistance is true of all the county offices on aging,
yes, it is.
Correct?
Yes,
okay.
it is.
All right. There are some things that you all uniformly do, and then there are some unique features.
Yes, and uniformly everyone has information and assistance. Each county, again, Monmouth or New Jersey is a home rule state, so every county is just set up a little bit different than the other one. One of our other services, caregiver services. This is almost another demographic people forget about, because it's the parent or the child who's taking care of either the disabled person or the senior, who many times needs assistance themselves. So we offer respite programs for them, counseling programs for them, and again, it's a very needed service. And one of our last services in the aging office is outreach. This is where one of my social services folks would go out and they'll talk to civic groups, community groups, everyone, letting them know what services we have available and where they can find them and how they can get them. The second area we have is disabilities, and that's short-term care management. Is primarily what's handled there. And again, information and referral, same as information and assistance for what the folks need. And lastly is the Veteran Service Office, broken into two areas. One is internment services for let's say, indigent veterans who don't have any family and they need a place to be buried. We'll work with them on this, work with the funeral parlors. One of the other areas is 38,000 flags are placed in Monmouth County by this office. But the big thing that Sue is working with is the full-service Veteran Service Office, where she works with veterans and becomes their voice, if you wish to call it, with the Veterans Administration for pension and compensation claims that the veteran is entitled to.
This veterans of all ages?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's a very important thing to note, and so hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about that. But when something like Sandy happens, how do you shift into a different gear?
One of the things we do, we'll coordinate with Monmouth County Office on Emergency Management, one of the first things, to make certain that the Register Ready program is up to date, that, and the Register, go ahead, I'm sorry, Grace.
No, I want you to explain what the Register Ready program is, because I think it's an important term, and I think that it might be new for some of our viewers.
Okay. Register Ready is a statewide program, and anyone in the state can register. But basically, it's for people who have special needs. And they would come to the Monmouth County, to an office on aging or to an emergency management office within the county. They would sign up for it, and it's a very simple 4-page document, and it asks, what your needs are. Do you need wheelchair? Do you need oxygen? Do you have your own transportation, et cetera? Then this is entered into a database. So in a time of a disaster like Sandy, the information goes out to the various communities. So the local offices of emergency management and police departments and fire departments have the information. So if there's an evacuation, they know where to go. They know what the needs are of the individual. Because in certain cases, you're probably going to have the EMTs go out and rescue them or relocate them or pick them up. Other cases, you just need a car to be able to carry them.
So now you mentioned that somebody comes into the office. Is there another way to register?
There's a bunch of different ways to register. One is using their website, which is, if you have a computer and you're connected to the internet, which is www.registerready.newjersey.gov.
Okay.
The second is there's an 800 number, an 888 number that I think we're going to be putting up later on.
Okay.
I don't have it with me right now. And the third way is to call your local office of Office on Aging. In our case, in Monmouth County, it'd be 732-431-7450.
Well, I think that's very helpful. So since you and Sue are here, I mean, what kind of services did you really have to put in place, especially if you were encouraging people to evacuate?
Well, one of the first things we did, we notified our providers, especially the ones that were providing meals to the people that are stuck in their homes, to make certain that they had shelf-stable meals when the power went out, which we expected with the hurricane. Also, Meals on Wheels to see what could be done to provide the meals to seniors, because not all the roads were out, and there were cases where we could get food out to the individuals. The second thing is the senior centers became shelters in many cases. For example, in Middletown, it was not only a shelter, it was also a warming center. One of the other areas, my case managers went out and started contacting their clients to make certain that they were safe. Did they need to relocate? Did they have some place to go? Who could we contact in case they did have to move? And again, I said we did review the Register Ready program to make certain that people were registered and the local communities had the information. One of the other things we did post-Sandy, which was very difficult, was some of our case managers were able to get their cars out and were able to go around and visit some of the clients that were in need.
Well, I appreciate that, and I know that Sue really has some firsthand experience of working in the shelters. And Sue, I guess I'm wondering, how does someone know that they should be leaving their home? Is there an evacuation order, or?
Well, usually the community, the town, the police departments, what they will do is they will drive around with loudspeakers. They have reverse 911, which is very important. They were able to contact a large amount of people really quickly. And it's just important to stay, informed. Listen to a radio. If you still have electricity, watch the TV. Look out, see what your neighbors are doing. All these things are very important.
Is there assistance to get people to the shelters?
Yes, there is. The police department sometimes will provide assistance and provide transportation, but Monmouth County has the SCAT program, which is the Special Citizen Area Transportation, and they will provide transportation right to the shelters.
Well, I think that's very helpful. And are there things people should bring to the shelter?
Very important to bring your medication. And of course, to bring any medical compensatory devices like walkers, wheelchairs, canes, anything like that. Because when you're home and you're walking around a small apartment or a home, it's much different than going into a large shelter where you have long hallways and perhaps you're waiting in line to use a bathroom facility. It's really important that you bring your walker and you bring your wheelchair. You know, you could have a very simple knee injury.
Right.
And maybe you're just using a cane. You're thinking, oh, it's no problem. I can just walk around my apartment. But when you get to a shelter, it's much different. It's much different for you.
So, and how do you handle it if someone doesn't bring their medications with them? I'm just curious. I mean, people are, you know, distressed. They're gathering maybe some treasured items and they don't grab their medication. So what do you do?
Well, luckily, the Monmouth County Health Department, they set up at shelters. And they have doctors and they have nurses and they write prescriptions and they can get the medication. So they have that set up in place. So it's much better, though, if somebody shows up with their medication.
You know, we were talking before the show, and you really raised something that I thought was very interesting about cell phones.
Right.
So could you, you know, describe what you thought was an important issue that people should know?
Well, it's really important that people bring their cell phones, and particularly seniors who, you know, haven't spent a lot of years with cell phones. You know, people that are younger, they're either growing up with cell phones or they're spending, you know, they've had a cell phone for 15, 20 years.
In their pocket.
But like my father, who's 85 years old, it's okay for him. You know, he'll have his cell phone with him, but sometimes it's not on.
Right.
Or sometimes the ringer's all the way down. I go through this almost on a daily basis with him. I make sure that his ringer's all the way up.
Right.
You know, because people want to be able to get in contact with their elderly parent.
Right.
You know, people live far away from each other now. So, you know, my experience in the shelter was you have a senior that's in the shelter, they have a cell phone, the ringer's down, and their, you know, daughter or son is trying to reach them and they can't. So it's just really important to take the cell phone with you, make sure that the charger is with you,
Right.
and that the cell phone is turned on.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think because, you know, it's on the shelf.
Right.
It's not one of those things you're grabbing.
Exactly.
And I think the charger is very important.
The charger's important.
And I imagine the shelters become charging stations
Exactly.
as well.
They do.
So I think that's very helpful. I just really, and I imagine that some of those seniors that are out of their homes, where are they now? I mean, maybe this is a question for Chris. Because FEMA provides different types of services, right? So,
Right, through our individual assistance program, and to specifically our housing assistance, is that what we can do is we can come in and provide rental assistance. So there may be a number of families who are in rental properties around the state, or you know, hopefully close by to where they originally live, either awaiting repairs to be done to the home, or insurance to come in, or maybe looking for a new home. Or essentially just generally formulating a plan for the future, a longer-term housing plan than what they have right now. So there may be a number of families who are in rental properties around the state.
well, you really brought up an interesting point there in terms of long-term. And if we know that, you know, 6,500 seniors are still out of their homes just in Monmouth and Ocean counties, what do you think are the long-term effects and impacts? I know that we really talked about some of the things that people need to know afterwards. So, I mean, Sue, do you have some impression about how does someone do well in a shelter, and what do they need to know after? I guess that's my concern.
I think the most important thing in order for a person to do well in a shelter, like we discussed before, bring your medication, make sure your cell phone is with you, make sure you let people know where you're going, what shelter you're going to be at. Make sure when you get to the shelter that you register in the front. You don't walk through a side door and just find a place to sit down. Go through the front door, register with the Air Guard or the Army National Guard, the American Red Cross. They're usually manning the front tables. You know, when you have large shelters, sometimes you have a lot of different doors, and there may be people opening and closing doors, and you always want to make sure that you register so that if a family member is looking for you, they know where to find you. If you have a pillow or, you know, extra blankets, bring that, and to just make sure that people know where you are at. Because when I was at the shelter, you know, from time to time, someone would come in, I'm looking for my father, I'm looking for my mother. Well, the Air Guard was right there. They can look up the person and say, yes, they're here, or no, they're not here. So those things are very important.
You know, and I think there are probably some long-term issues that people have to cope with. So what suggestions do you have for them?
I think that one of the things that they have to be aware of is that we do have a 211 number, and if they're having problems with adjustment, being out of their home for a long period of time, dealing with issues of perhaps maybe not being able to return to their home for many months, and for some people not at all.
Right.
You know, there are a number of counseling services available, and FEMA has funded a lot of those services, and by calling 211, they will be able to get somebody on the phone, and they'll be able to direct them to, you know, different agencies, the American Red Cross, Catholic Charities. Those are the bigger agencies that are providing some case management assistance, and they'll be able to make the most appropriate referral.
You know, it's interesting. We have done a show on NJ211, and I think it's a very interesting service. And it is, I just want to sort of give it a little plug because
Right.
it is manned 24 hours a day. It's 211, and it is operated with a lot of support from United Ways and other organizations.
Yes.
And it does try to do, shall I say, a warm referral. So if they wanted to get somebody to the Monmouth County Office on Aging, they would stay on the line until one of Mike's caseworkers or one of his information and assistance people comes on the line. So it is a very important service. And you're right, I think it's a good stop, especially when people can't make many calls.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of an interesting thing. So let's look at the supplies that someone should have on hand. I mean, we have a variety of things on the table, and I know, Mike, you do presentations about how to help people be better prepared. So what are your suggestions?
Well, I'm going to plug FEMA one more time.
Okay.
Because FEMA has some outstanding pamphlets and articles out there on what to do in case of an emergency. But one of the big things that a person should do is 4 steps. Be informed, make a plan, okay, build a kit, an emergency kit, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, and then get involved. But I mentioned FEMA, and they have pamphlets that are readily available to anybody either at FEMA.gov. I mean, one of them is Be Prepared, and it tells you the 4 steps that I just talked about. They also have a pamphlet for older Americans, and we're talking about seniors right now, and their needs are a little bit different than the regular person because, again, we're talking the medications that Sue mentioned, you know, when they're being evacuated. The thing I think that you asked me initially was about an emergency supply list.
Yes.
Now, once again, the plug goes to FEMA. FEMA has just a little pamphlet that tells you the basic documents that you need or the basic supplies that you need. And it's everything from food and water, what you need there, and we're going to show a few in a second. But one of the major supplies we find that most people forget about when they're stocking up, because we tell them to get water, get canned foods that don't require water, like soups and chilies and things like that. One of the things that you should never forget is a can opener. And you'd be surprised how many people forget a can opener.
I mean the crank.
The hand crank can
Exactly.
opener. One of the other things we recommend too, and again Sue mentioned it, was the cell phone charger, and not for your home, not for the plug-in, but the one for your car. Because in many cases, the electricity will be out in your home, but your car will still have the battery, and you'll still be able to use it, you know, charge your phone. Some other items we have here that sometimes people forget about, and I try and tell people, whoops, thank you. I try and tell people that, you know, you should stay away from candles because candles not only burn oxygen, but they also could be a good source of a fire. The things that you can find right now which provide enough light for you to move around the home, again, to include a flashlight, you'd have that with you, but rather than burning down batteries, there's things that are known as light sticks or chemical lights. And these things you can find in Home Depots, Sports Authority, various sporting goods stores, etc. And they'll give you 8 to 12 hours of light, which is enough to keep your room so that when you walk around, you're not going to be stumbling or falling. One of the other things we recommend is an all-purpose tool. And the purpose of an all-purpose tool is, besides possibly opening cans, and this is one here.
That's a real one.
But
That's a very scary looking tool, let me tell you.
it does a lot of good things. I mean, it's like a little saw on this end, there's a wrench on this end. But it's something so you can turn off your gas. If you do have to evacuate your house, you should turn off your gas. If it's wintertime, they recommend leaving your electricity on so that you're able to, especially if you have electric heat, et cetera. But it's again, to me, and the years I was spent in emergency management, it's a must-have. And some other clues, just one other short little clue is, we have it right here on the table, are a couple of containers. One is a water container, and the other one is an empty orange juice container. But you take these, and if you have enough lead time, you freeze them, and then you put them in your refrigerator. And if you have a cooler, you use the cooler for the stuff that you're going to be used on almost like a daily basis, and you keep the frozen articles in your, or the frozen containers in your refrigerator. That'll keep your refrigerator cold for an additional 3 or 4 days.
And I know we have a variety of flashlights on the table, and I have a crank radio, but I have to say the boom box from my kids, if I had batteries, was a much better thing to listen to, because cranking works, but you know, it's
Only for a short period
only
of time.
for a short period of time. So I do want to come back maybe to the Register Ready, but before we do that, Register Ready list.
Yes.
But I do think it's helpful that Chris is here, because I think when you think about the rebuilding and the different things that go on and the long-term effects, I mean, you know, FEMA really plays a very different role. And so why don't you kind of give us a general idea of how you respond immediately and then what the long-term role is?
Well, immediately we come in such an event like this, we know there's been a large amount of people who have been displaced from their homes. So with a federal declaration that New Jersey had because of Sandy, we come in and operate our individual assistance grant funding. And that initially needs people to register with us. So whether we come in with people on the ground through our community relations teams, through the media, through local officials, and that we try and encourage everybody who's suffered any type of damage from the storm to register with FEMA.
Does that happen right away?
Right away.
Right away.
That happened with an event such as this. The declaration was handed down the day of the storm, I believe.
Okay.
So it was right away. But I mean, we highly encourage people to register with us, because if you don't register with us, we don't know that you need any type of assistance. And in an event such as this, registering with us can potentially bring FEMA grant money for any type of rental assistance, essential home repairs to get you back into your home. FEMA's not here to rebuild your home. We don't provide that type of funding.
Right.
What we do provide is enough funding to get you back on your feet, get you into a safe and secure location, so you can make a plan for future longer-term housing.
So I understand that you really provide 3 shelter options, and I think you've touched on the rental, and I know there were some hotel and motel, but there was a 3rd option that you have people housed in.
Sure. Immediately after the storm, while we don't have a lot of direct influence with the actual temporary shelters, we support those, but our main mission, especially here in New Jersey, was to get people registered with FEMA, and we enacted a unique sort of transitional sheltering assistance program, which was intended to get people out of the shelters and into hotels and motels as a transitional period, so where they could either become eligible with FEMA for rental assistance, or there would be a time where they could bridge the gap to get back into their own homes. And that was essentially to sort of depopulize the shelters. But in a situation like this, when there's been a number of displaced people, rental markets can get exhausted.
Right.
So what we do is we have a direct housing mission that's still ongoing in New Jersey, and that we worked very closely with the state of New Jersey and the Army Corps of Engineers to renovate 114 apartments at Fort Monmouth, where we currently have 103 families still occupying. And then we also brought in temporary housing units.
Are those mobile homes?
Mobile homes, yes.
Okay.
So where we scouted and looked for open pad space and commercial mobile home parks, where we could place these mobile homes. And we currently have 69 families that are still occupying those mobile homes throughout the state.
So I think you mentioned to me on the phone that there are a lot of applications still pending, or at least being processed.
Not necessarily pending, as the registration period has closed.
Right.
But what is still happening is that our assistance, as far as rental assistance, and through the mobile homes and through Fort Monmouth, can be up to 18 months. But we recertify families on a rolling basis.
And is there a cap as to how much support a family can get from FEMA?
For FEMA, it's $31,900. That is the cap.
That's the cap.
For FEMA grant money. Again, a lot of the rebuilding and recovery money comes actually through the Small Business Administration, who offer long-term, low-interest loans.
Not to homeowners.
To homeowners.
To
In a
homeowners,
disaster
okay.
setting, that's to homeowners,
Okay.
small businesses, and large businesses.
Well, I think that's good for people to know. I think that they don't necessarily think of the Small Business Administration as a place to go to.
Right. In a disaster setting, they'll offer longer-term loans that can be, interest rate can be as low as 1.6%, but they actually really do provide a lot of the recovery money for people who need that upfront money to do necessary home repairs while they're getting FEMA grant assistance for rental assistance or something like that. But it should also be noted that everybody's first line of defense is their insurance. So we
Their
always
home insurance.
Their home insurance is that your first call should be to your insurance company. Your second call should be to FEMA, because by law we can't duplicate any type of benefit you receive.
good
We
to
can
know.
supplement the benefit where they maybe say the insurance has fallen short. We can provide rental assistance if that's not in your insurance policy, but we can't duplicate whatever your insurance provides as any type of settlement.
Well, I think it's good to know all of those things. And so I guess I want to go back for a second. Is there long-term coordination going on in terms of the people that are still out of their homes between FEMA and the local providers?
Yes, we've provided grant money to long-term recovery groups that are
Okay.
mostly made up of volunteer and nonprofit organizations within each community. Yeah.
Well, I think that's very helpful. Oh, we didn't talk about pets. Can we just, talk about pets? We could talk for a long time, but what do you want people to do with their pets?
Well, the best thing for someone to do with their pets is to make sure ahead of time, if they can, that they've either provided a family or a friend
Okay.
to take care of their pets that aren't affected by the, by the disaster, or they take their pet to a pet shelter. If they can't do that, there are shelters available that you can take your pet with
Okay.
you, but you have to make sure that where you're going is a designated pet shelter.
Well, I really appreciate it because not only have we talked about people and their families, but we've also talked about their pets. So thank you very much. So again, I'd like to thank our guests for being with us today and for sharing your time. I think it's a very important subject, and hopefully people will be more prepared going forward. Again, Aging Insights is produced by the New Jersey Foundation for Aging. If you wish to make donations to the foundation or to sponsor an Aging Insights program, you can go to our website at www.newjerseyfoundationforaging.org, or you can call our office at 609-421-0206. And while you're at our website, please take a moment to fill out an online survey about Aging Insights programs. Feel free to provide comments on this show or other topics that we should offer in the future. We want to remind you to find out about senior services in your area to please contact your County Office on Aging, also known as the Aging and Disabilities Resource Connection in your county. You'll see a list of their numbers on our website, or you may call the state hotline number at 1-877-222-3737. Thank you for watching this episode of Aging Insights, and remember, aging is everyone's business.